Bezos Hashem. Good evening. Good evening, America. Good evening to everybody on Torah Anytime, everybody here on Torah Anytime and here in Ma'am Loez Ramat Bet Shemesh. We are resuming our Gemara Shir. Bezos Hashem, straight and simple Gemara. Not daf, not amud, not too much ear, not too much bakiyas, just a regular, simple Gemara Shir. Very rare nowadays, not part of a program, just a Gemara Shir, the way it used to be. So basically, we are in Perek Toilin, the 20th Perek of Maseches Shabbos, Daf Kuf Mem Amud Aleph. We are learning sugyas to do with Borer. Today, we're going to learn something very interesting about the medication on Shabbos. Very useful piece of information that we all have to know. We see the wisdom of Chazal, how amazing they were in their knowledge of refuah, of medicinal issues. And the shir is, as always, Leilu Nishmas, my father, Menachem ben Akiva, Rus Bas Shalom, Sar Bas Moshe, Leilu Nishmas, grandparents of my Talmidim as well. And for the quick release of all the hostages, Be'ezras Hashem, very soon. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Our Mishnah is full of information. En shoyrin esachiltis bepoishrin. Apparently, you have this kind of herb called chiltis. Chiltis, you're not allowed to soak the chiltis in lukewarm water. Bepoishrin. Why not? What is chiltis? What is it used for? Why can't you use it? If you look in the Meforshim in Rashi and others, it's not so clear. Is it something medical, not medical? The simple answer is, as the Mishnah Berurah brings down, Hiltis is some kind of herb that people used to drink in hot, in warm or cold water, as we're going to see. But the main reason why people would drink it was for medicine. The idea was it was something that was good for your heart. A person with a heart condition would have chiltis bepoishrin. I don't know exactly what chiltis is nowadays. You gave me the name yesterday. But Lamaisa, that chiltis is something which is primarily used for medication. However, it's not used only for medication. No. In other words, it's something that sometimes people drink also just for the fun of it, just for the good taste. It's mainly, the main idea primarily used for medication. And therefore, Me'ikar Adin, one is allowed to sip and drink that chiltus on Shabbos. Why? Halacha is that if something looks like and feels like, and is sometimes used as regular mashke, regular drink, that's okay to use on Shabbos, even though, that drink is used a lot for refuah. I'll give you an example, which I don't know if Sachal Mais, I'm not a poistek. I'll give a modern day example. Eskarov about it. I once did Eskarov something and he allowed me. You know these things called strepsils. You know these things that are like they're really sold in pharmacies, not in sweet shops. And I think that tells you the difference. It's mainly used for as medication for the throat, but it's like a sweet. It tastes quite nicely. It has good taste, in my opinion, and opinion of many. So although it's used mainly for refuah, otherwise some people just like to suck it for the fun, just because it's tasty. So here, there you are. You have something which is mainly used for refuah, but can be and is used also for other things. That thing, again, if the chiltis, you're allowed to use and drink it on Shabbos. Why aren't you allowed to soak it in warm water? Because, as the Gemara will tell us, it's uvda dechol. You're still preparing something, starting soaking it and preparing it. Uvda dechol means being too invested in that you're not supposed to be invested to in Shabbos. In other words, you're not supposed to start preparing something that is so elaborate, which is not regular food. It's still mainly medication. So you're preparing something that's more towards the medical side than the regular culinary side. That's uvda dechol. And it's uvda dechol. You're not supposed to make that on Shabbos. Make it any other day. There are exceptions. We'll see later. Aval noisan l'torcha choimetz. One is allowed to take the chiltis, mix it with vinegar, and dip his pita, his challah, it's after Pesach, his tomatoes, his olives, whatever you want, because that looks like derech achila. That's not considered preparing medication, you're preparing food, because chiltis with vinegar is mamish considered to be something culinary, something of the kitchen, and that's not called uvda dechol, because you're allowed to prepare food on Shabbos. Now we're going to talk about the boirer. The en shoylin is a kalshinin. Oh, and sholin is krashinin is very important. This has to do with our kitchens every Shabbos. And sholin is krashinin. Krashinin. What's krashinin, first of all? And sholin means you're not supposed to put the krashinin. We're going to explain what krashinin are very well now. Karshinin is mentioned like, a lot in the Gemara, and I always vacillated about what Karshinin means. Today I did my research. I looked in the Rishonim, I looked Lahavdil in the filtered internet, and I got a lot of information about Karshinin. So whatever Karshinin are, one's not supposed to take Karshinin, which is animal fodder, which is something small. There come as many small grains. Don't soak them. Don't put them in a bowl of water. Yes, soak them in water in order to let the bad karshinin or the dust or the garbage float up. Why? The chiddush is that's called borer. There's a question in halacha whether it's borer doraisa or dorabonon. Some say doraisa, and even if the rabbanon, you don't play games with that, because the chiddush is, although you're not using a sieve or you're not using regular kalim, because the water kilo happens by itself, but still that's normal enough to be called borer to one level or the other, and that's a chiddush of our Mishnah. That applies in every kitchen. What do you do with grapes? Lettuce, many things, right? You soak them in water and you want the dirt to come up. That's not allowed on Shabbos. Could be Nisa Doraisa. And here's the source. Now, what are karshinin? Okay, what are karshinin? So karshinin are, one second. Here you have karshinin. I want to share a new share here. Karshinin are, no, I'm not managing to show them. I'm sorry. Karshinin are basically like that. Either they're called vetches, and the Oruch brought down in the Ramah brings down a word in Spanish or French or something, also something similar to vetch. Vetch basically is very nice flour, purple, and it has those pods. It has those like pods, like you have a pea pod. It has pods with peas. Yeah, and that was used for animal fodder, or poor people would eat it. That's what I read online, which is very interesting because it says it's mainly used for animals. It says in halacha and sometimes for people. I guess the people who are very poor would eat something that's similar to animal food. So these are like peas, and those peas are little balls, and you put them in the water so the bad ones soak up, and that's not allowed. Float up, and that's not allowed. The other pshat of karshinin, based on the Mefarshim of the Mishnah, they say cress. Cress is like those, they're very common in England in sandwiches, they eat them, that I've seen. Cress, they're like those, no, sprouts. They're like bitter taste, but nice. They taste like bitter. They have them sometimes with cheese. It's like the bitterish kind of long, thin sprouts. They're called cress. And that can also be karshinin. And also small, like little balls, like little, whatever lines. And those two, I assume you soak and you give the behemoth to eat. So those karshinin, either it's vetch or cress, one of the two. Don't put them in water for them to be soaked and let the garbage, the refuse float up. That's not allowed because of borer. That's borer. That's called borer. According to some Rishoni, borer with a kli. That's a kli. The kli is the water. That's a normal way to do it. Veloy shafin oison. Shafin oison, you're not supposed to peel them. Yeah, don't peel them. I'm not sure if it's the what's the names the small ones. I don't know. It's to peel. If it's the one with the pod, whatever, don't peel them. And that could be, according to Rashi, an issue of borer. According to the Gemara in Yerushalmi, it's considered to be dash because peeling off many times is dash. Which means you are allowed to place them with the bad stuff, good and bad together, into a kvora, into a sieve. In other words, you want to contain them, you want to store them, yeah, in a kli that's full of holes, like mesh. And then you're allowed to do it because your kavana is not to let the garbage fall out. It may or may not happen, and that's called what? Dovo shel miskavin. Dovo shel miskavin, upaskan like Reb Shimon is allowed. But kolkola is a wicker basket. You're allowed to put them in the wicker basket, even though it's likely that the bad ones, the little ones, are going to fall off between the sides, and you may be even happy with that, but it was honestly not your kavana, and it's not psikresha. It sometimes happens, sometimes not, that they're being, falling on the side. You're not doing it on purpose. You're not shaking them. You just place them there, and you go. Have your coffee. You place them there and finished. And therefore, you may or may not fall out. The bad ones were the good ones. It's called Dover Shem Miskaven. Dover Shem Miskaven, with Patzkan like Reb Shimon, is allowed. And the Mishnah here is proving us to be to of support Reb Shimon, and Allah is like Reb Shimon. And if opposed to Reb Yehuda, you know that Reb Yehuda says Dov Hashem is Kavan is also. Next, please, en koivrin es a teven bekvoro. Oh, en koivrin es a teven bekvoro means teven basically is hay, straw and hay. Now, the teven basically is, straw. Now, the straw, some of it has good stuff that what's contained in the straw is good for animals to eat, right? But the sides, the top, the bottom, certain sides, parts of the teven are inedible for the animals, even. It's that bad. And you want to sieve it, you want to sift it in order to get the bad stuff out of the kvara, out of the sifter, and you just want the good ones to stay inside for the animals. That's considered to be meraked, and meraked is one of the Surah Daraisa of sifting. Now, I asked you yesterday, what's the Chiddush? I'll tell you what the Chiddush is. Apparently, I looked up the Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura says that it's a Chiddush, if I understood him correctly. First of all, he says it's not so simple that Teven, usually it's a Shaila, if it's normal enough to use a sifter for Teven. Usually, a sifter is meant for flour, not for animal food, right? So maybe it's not the derech. Kamashmal and it's also according to the Rambam, it's mashmal. It's only also the Rabbanon, not the Raisa, because it's not the derech. Another way, you don't have real psolis. The Mishnah Berurah sounds it's not real garbage. In other words, this is good as animal food, and that's good for what? For burning, to use as fuel. So they're both good. Elamai, that's worse, and that's the worst. But it's not like this is prime food and this is all garbage. The difference is a bit, blurred. And the chiddush is even that's also either the rice or the rabbanon. That's a shaila. V'lo yitnen al gabe mokem gava b'shvil sheyered hamoitz. You're not supposed to put the teven with the garbage parts, with the chaff, with the bad part. Don't place it in a high place so the motes, the bad part, falls off. That's not allowed. Could be it's only the rabbanon or uvda dechol. It's not the normal way of borer, but it's still osir because that's similar to borer. When you put it on top of like a high place and then all the bad stuff falls off and you do it on purpose, it may be indirect, but it's still osir. Oh, what about if you want to take that animal fodder with the bad parts in it? You take it again, not in order to select. You just use the kvara. What's a kvara? It's like a big bowl full of holes, basically like a big sifter, and you use it as a big spoon, as a big container to move it into the avus, into the trough of the animal. And as you walk into the trough, the bad ones may fly out, and you may be okay with that, but it's not your purpose, and it's not going to happen for sure. Remember, these are the two golden rules. If you don't mean it to happen, and it's not going to happen for sure, what is it called? Dover Shen Miskaven. What am I? One second. What am I doing? I'm transferring. One second. Avus. I'm transferring the kash, teven, moitz, the good and the bad ones together, placing them in a kli full of holes, and I'm moving them to the animal's cow shed. So what am I doing? I have no kavanah to be borer. That's first. I'm not doing bar. I'm transferring it with a big spoonful of holes. That's all. Now, won't it fall out? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do I want it to fall out? Lav dafka. It's not my main kavanah. Therefore, it's called Dover Shen Miskaven, and we follow Rabbi Shimon, and we allow Dover Shen Miskaven. Yes, Akiva.
What's Avus?
Avus is the trough, is where the animals eat from. It's the area if you ever been to a kibbutz or moshav, you see all the cow sheds, right? They all stick out their heads, yeah, and they eat from the floor, from that, long, kind of, the dining room trough, trough, I think it's called, yeah. Ibalu, go look the heilige Gemara.
But it's not something that comes out.
No, it doesn't sound like it comes out of the trough. No, both Rashi here and the Rambam, I saw the Rambam clearly saying, you're on your way to the trough. That's, yeah. And as you walk, it may fall off. It's not a bowl, it's longer. It's like a long thing. And all the cows that put their head inside and eat from it. It's not long, no. Ibailu. There was a question asked in the Besmedrash in Babel, the Heilige Amoraim. Shara Mai? Question mark. What's the halacha if the person did do shria, which means shruya, gebrokt. We just said Pesach, Hasidic people here. Shalamai, what happened if the person soaked the chiltis in the warm water? It says in the Mishnah, don't do it. Well, what happened if you did? If you did, then what's the halacha? Tirgama Rav Ada Nosho, Rav Ada from the city of Naresh, he explained Kameda of Yosef. He said in front of Rav Yosef, Shalochayv Chatos. Wow. Shalochayv Chatos, if you did do the Shria in lukewarm water, you chayv Chatos. Sounds like why? It's like bishul. Now that's a big chiddush, right? Because when you put something in lukewarm water, that's not bishul. True? Ugh, I'm sorry. Okay, Me'akvin from the Yitzhar Horror over here. Yeah, so Shar Chav Chatus. But why did he say that? I think the reason is that's my own svara, because maybe for the Chiltis, that's good enough to have Bishul. You remember we had the Shiloh about Shemen long ago, Daf Memamud Beis, that Shemen, oil, maybe even if it doesn't get the Atzalet, but it's already called Bishul. Because maybe for that level of softness, of the viscosity being different, is already called Bishul. So maybe the Havamina was that for the Chiltis, yeah, to be in warm water is the tikkun of bishul. It gets to the same effect, maybe. However, Abai is not happy with the idea of Avad and Osho. Abaye answered back and said, Ela me'ata, according to you, Shora umtza b'maya hachinami de michayev. If a person soaks a piece of meat, raw meat, in water, in warm water, with vichayev, no way. Bishul does not apply to warm water, only to hot water. So why are you telling me that you chayv chatos? Elamar Abaye, no, the Isser is, as we said, midarabonon. Why midarabonon? In other words, since preparing the medication, and it is used a lot for medication, that chiltis is not such a tmimis dike food. It is used a lot for refuah. So to prepare something refuah is considered to be uvda dechol. Now, boy mine Rabbi Yochanan mi Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Yanai a new question. Ma'u lishros esachiltis betzoinen. Is one allowed to soak the chiltis, same vegetable, same herb, in cold water? The Mishnah said don't soak it in warm water, lukewarm, and he is asking, what about cold water? Omerle, asu, no, you're not allowed to. Frek the Gemore, meaning Rabbi Yochanan is now challenging Rabbi Yanai. V'anant nan en shonas techiltis bepoishrin. The Mishnah said, don't soak it in warm water. Habetzoin and mutal. Sounds like if it's done with cold water, then it's okay. Why are you telling me, Rabbi Yanai, that cold water is not okay? The Mishnah indicates that it is, right? The Mishnah says only in warm water. Mashma cold water is fine. Why are you, Rabbi Yanai, saying differently? Omar Lei, Rabbi Yana answered with a bit of, pepper in his mouth. Kivyachol, he says, Im ken ma bein li v'lecho. If you don't believe what I'm saying, what's the difference between you and me? Why are you asking me questions if you don't think I know how to learn a Mishnah? Why are you asking me questions if you're challenging me? Masnisi nichidoi, I'll give you the answer. The Mishnah is a das yachid. I know the Mishnah. I know the Mishnah only said that chiltis should not be soaked in warm water. But that Mishnah is das yachid, is the opinion of who? Of Rabbi Yossi, not the opinion of the mainstream opinion of Rabbanon, the Tanya. Everything will be clear now from the Brisa. Many times the Brisa shed a light on the Mishnayos, and here's an example. The Tanya, en shorin esachiltis, lo bechamin v'lo betzoinen, bingo. Tanakama, Rabbanon, the majority say, neither chamin nor tzoinen. Chiltis should not be soaked neither in warm water nor in cold water. That's also all around. Why? Because both are used for medication, as we'll see later. However, you know who follows our Mishnah, or you know who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi Omer Bechamin also Betzonen Muto. Oh, Rabbi Yossi is the only one who said that it's also Bechamin and it's okay to soak it in cold water. Maybe he believed that cold water is not as medicinal. Maybe it's not so much tircha, so much uvda dechol. Whatever the reason is, Rabbi Yossi takes tzoinen one step further and he allows it. And our Mishnah is following Rabbi Yossi, but it doesn't mean that's the truth. And halacha is that it's both tzoinen and cham is osir. Frek the Gemara, technically speaking, lemay avdile, lay, what do they use it for? Yeah, what kind of disease, what kind of medical situation is that chilt is good for? And the Gemara answers, leyukra deliba, for the heaviness of the heart. Yukra, yokor means doesn't mean expensive. Yokor means in Aramaic means heavy. Yeah, if one has heavy heart physically, whatever that means, I don't know, some kind of bad heart condition, then the chiltis soaked in hot or cold water is good for him. And the Gemara is telling us a story which is going to lead us to a major, major halacha. Rav Acha bar Yosef chash beyukra deliba. Yeah, Rav Acha bar Yosef, he started feeling lo aleinu that heaviness in the heart. Also, Lakameda Mar Ukva. He went to Mar Ukva for advice. I guess it's some kind of pain. I assume it creates some kind of heartache. I guess so. And he went to Mar Ukva to seek advice. Omerle zil shati tlosotikli of chiltisa. Go and drink the amount of chiltis equivalent to 3 gold coins. Yeah, 3 golden coins. Look, Rashi says mishkal gimel zehuvim. Yeah, betloso yomi for 3 days. 3 days in a row, you should drink that drink of chiltis, the size of 3 golden coins, one each day. Okay, so that was on Thursday, maybe Wednesday. Ozal, Ishti, he went. He followed the advice of Mar Ukva. Ishti chamsha b'Shabbos, umali Shabbos. He drank the dosage that was necessary for him on Thursday. Mali Shabbos on Erev Shabbos Friday. And then came the question, Litzafra, Mazel Tov, Git Shabbos. Now came Shabbos morning. Tzafra, Shabbos, Tafra Tava. Came Shabbos morning, and he was in a problem because he did not prepare it before. Ozal Shol B'Midrasha, he asked in the Besmedrash, what shall I do? I'm supposed to have my third doses of what? The medication. I'm supposed to prepare it now on Shabbos. I was told in the Mishnah not to prepare, but I'm in the middle of the course of antibiotics, the course of medications that I'm taking. Am I allowed? What am I supposed to do? Amrulay, so they answered him, Tana debe Rav Ada. They gave him the answer either on behalf of the yeshiva Be Rav Ada, Tana debe Mar Bar Rav Ada, or his son Mar Bar Rav Ada, either the yeshiva of the father or the Talmid yeshiva of the son, gave him the answer. Shois Odom Kavu Kavai Men Choshesh. You're allowed to drink a lot of chiltis water on Shabbos, no chashash. How much is kav? We said yesterday 24 beitzim. You're allowed to have as much as 24 eggs worth weight of the chiltis, or even 48. No problem in choshesh, which means there's no problem to drink the chiltis on Shabbos. Omer lehu, so he told them, you misunderstood my question. Lishtas lokami baili. I have no question. I know I'm allowed to drink it. Why is he allowed to drink it, even though it is refuah? Because of what we said before. Because it's not primarily, exclusively something under the counter. Yeah, it's not something that is only medicinal. No, it's not something pharmaceutical. Because although they use it a lot for refuah, it's also used stop for a drink. So they're allowed to drink. Yeah, you can have as long as you're not over bishul. All types of teas are very healthy. Ginger tea or I don't know, chamomile. Not to drink it on Shabbos because people drink tea as long as you know how to prepare it on Shabbos Mitzad Bishul. Yeah, so that's not a problem. There wasn't even a question. Of course, I'm allowed to drink the chittas b'Shabbos. He coming by lishroismai. Aha. The question is, am I allowed to soak it? Because the soaking itself is still a problem. Because even though it's also used as refuah, as a regular drink, but because it's used a lot for refuah, preparing it is still looked at by Chazal as uvda dechol. So maybe mitzad uvda dechol of preparing, maybe I'm not allowed to do that, and I'm down to my third day of the course of medication. What will I do? Omar lehu Rav Chia bar Avin. Rav Chia bar Avin answered, and he said, "Bedidi ava uvda." The same issue happened to me in the past. I was exactly in the past. I was then where you are now. And I went and asked Ravada Barava, and he didn't know. He didn't know whether I'm allowed to keep taking, not taking, I'm allowed to prepare the medication or not. If I'm in the middle of the course, then I went and asked Ravuna, Omar, and he told me, Hachikomer Rav, and he quoted Rav as saying, Shoire betzoinen umeniach bechama, which means you are allowed to soak it, But don't go too wild. Don't go on a field day. You're allowed to do it in a shinui, which means you should soak it in cold water. Apparently, the warm water is better. So after you soaked it in cold water, then you place that concoction, the whole thing together, in the sun for it to warm up. Frag the Gemara, what kind of advice is that? Kiman the Shari? Which means, remember, there was an opinion of who? Of Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi said before that to place it in cold water is allowed. Ah, so maybe Rav really is not allowing you to prepare the medication on Shabbos. He's just following the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who believes that making it in cold water is not a problem to begin with. But Enochinam, in warm water, he would not allow you. So it's not really allowing you to break the uvda dechol in order to get better. He's only, using the more makel opinion. And says the Gemara, uh-oh, not true. Afilul man de osar, even according to those who forbid the cold water, who are they? Rabbanon, Tanakama, the mainstream halacha, even though we usually did not allow you to use even cold water, here they would allow you to prepare the medication. Why? And that's the who. Now we get to the climax of the sugya. Animili, that is true. Heichadelo ish tiklal. If you never drank it before, if this is the first time you're taking the medication, that's a problem. Aval hocha over here, Kevin the ish tichamisha umale shabsa, since you drank it already on Thursday and you drank it on Friday, Yilo shati b'Shabbos mistaken. If you don't drink it on Shabbos, it will be dangerous. And we said yesterday, here you see the goodness of Chazal. Here we see two things. We see something very important hashkafically and something very, very important halachically. Chazal knew in their great wisdom and tremendous Ruach HaKodesh, Rishonim Kemalochim, that when you take medication and you're in the middle of the course of medication and you stop in the middle, it's dangerous. And today they know that because of antibiotics, right? So sometimes you take medication, and if you stop short in the middle, that's more dangerous than before. And for that precise reason, not only they allow you to take the medication, that's for sure, they even allow you to prepare the medication. Yeah? And halacha lemaisa, this is, as we said yesterday, I had an argument once with a very chashma Talmud Chacham, and here, black and white, we see that this is one of the sources. That's what some of the Sefer Halacha use this Gemara to learn the famous halacha that applies today, and that is that even though one's not supposed to take medication on Shabbos, unless he's noifel mishkav, unless this and that, but normally, if somebody has an ache that he can, survive and function, not supposed to take medication. What's exception? If you're in the middle of taking the course of medication, that's halacha, right? The doctor told you, let's say, to take some pill for 10 days in a row, right? Well, 10 days usually would have Shabbos somewhere out there in the middle or beginning of the 10 days, and you told you have to start today right away. You're supposed to take it every day, including Shabbos, and that's the source. Here, you see. Yeah, of course. And Chazal knew it all. Mistamich. Now we're going to change. I broke my head, basically, as we say in Hebrew, and I couldn't wrap my mind about, regarding why is the next sugya connected to the previous sugya. Maybe you guys can help me. Maybe to do the names. I think it's because of the name, Ravach. I don't know. I don't know. But basically, I don't know what's the connection between the previous sugya and the upcoming sugya. But in any event, I think it's the name Ravacha Bar Yosef. I think it's the name Ravacha Bar Yosef. Here's another story to do with the same Amoyer called Rav Acha Bar Yosef, which is not commonly mentioned in the Gemara. So here's another story about Rav Acha Bar Yosef. Mistamich, and this story has to do with Melacha of what? Remember from yesterday? Melacha of Libun. Libun, what's Libun? Bleaching, whitening, cleaning clothes. One's not supposed to wash clothes on Shabbos. And I want to tell you before we start something very interesting about the Melacha of Libun. Libun, as we know, the process of libun, if you know how to wash, something, hand wash, there are lots of different things you do in the process, right? First of all, you soak it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to rub the stains,
Yeah.
right? You wring it, squeeze it, right? Okay. So the
Yes.
MSC is something interesting. Rambam also miramis to what I'm telling you. Remember, the Rambam says about one of the stages. Each and every stage of the malacha of libun is a malacha by itself, is an isur deraisa by itself. Yeah, let's have clean clothes, yeah, and it's full of water, and I'm wringing it. It's usur, right? Yes, it is for sure. Sure. Schita is isur, terrible isur, yeah. What about if I take something dry, but I'm removing the dirt completely? Yeah, the guy has mamish stain and he manages like that to remove it out completely out. Also, probably the rice. Yes. If you have tchina falling on your tie, you can remove it, but make sure a little bit stays. It's not. Don't do it too professionally. Yeah, I'm not opposed to kalacha, but it's with the kids are every stage is also right. And we see another stage, even what we call even shaking it is an Isser. We'll see later. Yeah. In other words, each and every stage of the libun creates its own Isser Malacha, either Av or Tolda on Shabbos. Now we're going to learn about one of these stages. Okay. Mistamich ve'azil Rav Acha bar Yosef. Rav Acha bar Yosef was an old man, and he was supporting himself. A katfei de Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak bar Achte. He supported himself as he was walking along. He was walking along, supporting himself on the shoulders of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, his nephew, the son of his sister. Omerle, the elderly Rav Acha bar Yosef told his nephew, he asked him, Ki matina leber of Safra, when we get to the house of Safra, Ailina, please let me in, bring me into his house. Kimatu, when they arrived, Aile, he let him in, yeah, he brought him into the house of Rav Safra. Boimine, now Rav Acha bar Yosef is asking his host, Rav Safra, Ma'ala kiskusi kitnita b'shabsa. Is one allowed to basically rub like that, yeah, to, how do you call it, yeah, to rub this way, yeah? Are you allowed to rub the clothes, the kutonet? Kutonet is not an upper garment, it's more like the shirt or maybe undershirt, it's a shaila, it's something that you wear closer to the body. Are you allowed to rub it on Shabbos? What's the question? Rashi explains that those kutonas were made out of pishtan. They're made out of flax, linen. Now, linen garments, after you wash them, back then, as I said, they didn't have softeners, right? Some a softener is the hardest thing for me to buy in the supermarket. I never get the right kind of softener. You know, I need to always call my wife. So back then, I didn't have that problem. Just had no softeners, right? So you know, the white one, this one, that fragrance, whatever. But kids, sir, back then life was simple, no softeners, right? Also, there's another product, the katsefit is very hard. The cream knows like 15 types. Anyway, the kids, sir, that thing back then there was no softener, so it would come out of the laundry hard and you'd have to meshafshef rub it, yeah, basically rub it this and that to make it softer. But lemaisa, there were two effects that were happening. There were double impact. It would become what softer and also whiter. Yeah, matzhil the lavnunis. The libun, it would become the white. It would become real, pristine, bright white. You know, like in the advertisements, like the commercials for the good, washing machines. Yeah, comes out as white as snow. So now the shaila is, am I allowed to do it on Shabbos? What's the question? Do we say l'rikuchi kitnisa kamechave in the shapir dami? Do we assume in the human psyche of Chazal, do we assume that the human psyche, the kavana of the person is lerikuchi, to make it softer and more supple, and therefore that's allowed? You're allowed to soften things on Shabbos, it's not significant. Or dilma, or maybe le'uludi chivra k'mechaven v'asir. Maybe the kavana is to bring in lahoilid, to create more whiteness, as they say, yeah. And it's also, like Colgate, extra white. Yeah, maybe that's also. Now the Ritva says, let's ask the question what he, and let's ask the person what he means. Says the Ritva, it's not really about the person's kavana. The shal is how does Chazal view that? In other words, the general psychology of human beings in general, how do we view that? And Echnami, I did see in the Mishnah Berurah L'chumra that if the person would tell you that his kavana is clearly to make it whiter, it's for sure also. We're talking about Mr. Joe Schmo, that like many of us behaves like an AI robot. We just do it after the kvisa. Yeah, we're not sure what's the main kavana, right? There is no clear kavana. Ishali is, how does Chazal view that, yeah, as an act? Is it considered to be an act of heter, you're just trying to soften it, or do you view it more as an act of iser, trying to whiten it? If you ask the guy and he tells you clearly otherwise, maybe that's another shaila. But we didn't ask the guy. We don't know. Yeah, what's the assumption? What's the assumed thing? Omerle, so he answered him, "Lerekuchika mechaven v'shapir dami." No, the assumption is okay. the person probably means, or we view that halachically as rikuch. We view that action as just softening, and it's okay. Nothing to do with making it whiter and brighter and bleached. Kinofak. End of conversation. Indoor conversation behind closed doors. The top secret cabinet. And now kinofak. When Rav Acha bar Yosef left the house of Rav Safra, Osa, he went, Omerle, my boy Marmine. What did he ask him? What did Master ask of him of the Balabais? I'm curious to know. Omerle, he told him, boy Mine, Mal Kiskusi Kitnita, B'Shabsa. I asked him, are you allowed to rub, and go like that to make the friction of the undergarment in Shabbos? Omerle Shapir Dami, and he told me it's okay. So now the nephew asked him, Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak asked him, Sudra. Why didn't you ask him about the Sudra? Sudra is much more prominent. What's Sudra? I checked again, by the way. It is in Kiddushin Daf Ches. Sudar is a scarf that's worn over the head. Something very important, like a headgear over the head and the shoulders. Yeah? What? Whatever. No, it's more not the stuff. It goes on the shoulders too, I think. Why didn't you ask him about Sudra? So he said, Sudra lo kami baili. I have no question about Sudra. Why? The Baimi Ravuna. I already asked Ravuna the same question about Sudra in the past. Upashitli and Pashitli and Chinami, as we saw, Pashitli leisura. Yeah, in other words, he told me that it is not allowed. You're not allowed to be mekaskis, meshafshef the Sudra, because then we assume the kavana, that's the kavana, then the kavana is viewed as to make it cleaner and whiter. If so, v'tifshatlei lemar mesudra, why can't you just, basically derive one from the other, right? Just a ksudra, we assume the kiskus is osir, so too should be the undergarment. Amarle, it's not the same at all. Also, mechzikilu dechivra. Also, lo mechzikilu dechivra, which means over there, because the person cares a lot about the looks of his sudra. That's what you see on the head. That's what you see first, right? It's very visible, very clear, right? And therefore, there people's minds are more on the beauty than the softness. So therefore, there it at least looks like a ludachivra. Whether even if it's not, but it looks like it. The shankin over here, but the undergarment, the shirt, undershirt, under the kapete, or whatever, something people only see halfway. There, people care much less about the looks, and therefore that leaves room for a question. And enochinami, and you see the answer was that it's allowed, and that's halacha. Halacha is enochinami that if it's a garment that's worn outside, then we assume the kiskusi is aser. If it's something worn inside, then it's mutter, unless, as the mishnah, the person knows he's doing it to make it whiter. Person cares about the whiteness of his t-shirt, whatever, dafka, then enochinami. Then it would be aser because he knows he's doing the wrong thing. But the parv situation is assumed to be okay. Shkoyech, Omer of Chizda is for tomorrow, Omer Hashem, back on track. Atzlochu Bracha, we are at the very end of Kufmem Amud Aleph. See you tomorrow, Omer Hashem, same time, same place, 9:15 Israel time. Join us in Zoom. Join us from the whole world. Shkoyech to Torah anytime, and everybody who's listening and watching, and everybody's Oila B'Torah. Maybe I'd share with you the picture, if I can. I'll share the picture of the vetch maybe another time. Okay, Beseder, Shkoyech, thank you.